Yeah. So
let's go back to what you saw the size of the assets.
it was massive, but I was already prepared for large numbers, but not that large. Because when I started out as a financial broker, I was around 20, 24, 23, 25, and the size of numbers that I talked about back then were so large, but I was too young. They say, well, you're so young. How? There were certain transactions, like when Blockbuster, the transaction that became Blockbuster, when it was first conceived, they sent it to me for funding. Yes, that was around perhaps 1988 or thereabout, or 1987, at that time, when they were first conceiving it. They sent the loan request, the funding to me. So I was one of the first people that saw Blockbuster at that time. And I tried to get it done, but I couldn't get it done. But I knew about it. So Blockbuster became what it was. I think the guy that started it then was Azingale, and the same guy that eventually started Waste Management. I think that was him. That was the same guy. So I've been involved in some very massive real estate transactions along the way. Also, like there's a development in this area called I don't remember the name, but it has become a very massive neighborhood, an area, almost a town. That project was presented to me along the way. So I've seen a lot of things since I've been in Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've been here since 1994 in Dallas. I was involved in oil and gas projects. We used to put limited partnership arrangements together, and we sell those to accredited investors. So I got exposure to the world of finance and mortgages and real estate. So because I was already used to seeing large transactions, but because I have no control in any of those, I was always a middleman. So I made up my mind that I was no longer going to be a broker, because I couldn't control the outcome. As a broker, you're just a middleman. I learned enough to make up my mind to become that the buck should stop with me, because I can control what I do, but I cannot control what other people do. But as the principal, I make the final decision, and I have the ability to control the decisions that I make, because I know what I will do, but you don't know what other people will do. So I got tired of that, because there were a lot of deals that I put together that I never got the reward. And there were a lot of things that I put together that was never concluded, because you don't know where it fell apart. So that decision was the best decision that I made, that I was going to take responsibility for my actions. I was going to control my narrative and my infrastructure. So the idea of being a venture capitalist, because that's what NVC Fund is. NVC Fund stands for Network Venture Capital Fund. So we just abbreviated to NVC Fund.
You stepped into a realm and a world that, for most people from the outside looking in, is big.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel big to you?
Well, it is big. It is big, and sometimes that becomes a real issue because people look at you and they cannot equate you with the size of your thinking. They want to define your limitations. They want to define your upper limit, and I don't subscribe to that. I believe I trust God. I trust what He has birthed in me as a creation of His, as a son of God. I trust when the scripture said that the earth belongs to Him and all that dwells in it, the cattle and the hills and everything in between belongs to Him, and it seems there's no limitations to His ability, and He is no respecter of persons, and He can bless anyone as He chooses. And I trust that He has chosen me and blessed me so that it will confound the wise, because nobody expects somebody like me to be able to do some of the things that I do. And I relish and trust that that He has picked me to do it so that He will confound the wise, and as a show of His grace that He can bless and choose anyone that He chooses to do whatever He chooses, as long as that person's heart stays on Him and trust in Him. So I trust that, and I believe that, and I live accordingly.
That is the language of a champion.
Thank you.
And as a champion, you have also dealt with obstacles. We'll eventually go into the details of the obstacles, but as a champion, what do you believe about you that enables you to stand flat-footed, toe-to-toe with your obstacles?
Oh, well, talking about obstacles and blockades, I've dealt with that through the years. And, especially from the financial institutions and banks. And, I mean, you think there's racism in the police department, or it is even worse in the financial arena, because you don't see the people that are discriminating against you because they're hiding behind the scene. Whenever you present your transactions, whenever they see your financials, they see of what your claims and what you're trying to do, they just, they believe that you're not supposed to be playing at that league, So it's very lonely up there. So you deal with that consistently, and I've dealt with that in such a profound way through the years. So, but whenever they put a blockade one way, I find a different route to go about my business, because at the end of the day, I control the assets, and nobody can take that away from me because it's verifiable. They are registered at the county level. They are registered with the government, and as a matter of fact, the safekeeping and the claims are issued through the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Interior of the United States government. So that sort of makes it impenetrable, because they don't have to ask me. They can go find out for themselves. The appraisal was done. The asset report was done. The core drillings were done. So we have all of those documentations that prove the proof of claim, the proof of ownership. So that's sort of supposed to stop it. but nevertheless, it still doesn't. So I through my obstacles, I find opportunities, because that I've been able to do things with so-called in-ground assets that a lot of people couldn't do, or they find difficulties to do. And perhaps that's because I have I put in more effort, I put in more study. I know the financial system backward and forward. I know the terms, the definitions of those terms that we use in finance and banking, and that most people just gloss over, but they really don't know the real meaning. So these things don't come easy. And as a black man, with all the obstacles, you have to be twice or three times as good to accomplish the same thing that other people will easily accomplish, because you have to know more. You have to work harder, and that I have done tenaciously over the last 15 years or so.
We will, in another interview, we'll go into this details as much as you choose. SEC has gone on the offensive with you for the last 3 years. What's that been like for you? I'm disappointed that they have carried on and on and on and on, all just in an attempt to at first it was like, okay, so maybe they don't understand. They found it difficult to believe, even though the NVC financial statements and audit report and valuation statements and rating was placed in their platform called EDGAR, because that's where reporting companies send their documents in the archives for the easy access to investors, institutional players, and those who are interested in knowing more about the status of any public company. NVC is not a public company, we're private. But back in 2017, after we finished our financial statements, aggregation and audit and bookkeeping, we decided to start coming out. And in the course of that, a gentleman came to our preview that ran 3 small public companies. And through one of my other associates who helped organize the books, and said, hey, would you be open to providing these companies with the balance sheet strength that they need to be able to access their lines of credit? So I asked for a little bit of details, and after I get to know, I said, well, it's not a big deal. $700 million for the 3 companies is not a big deal. I mean, it's less than, I think it's around 15,000 trust shares of NVC, and NVC has 1 billion trust unit. At that time, the valuation of the trust unit was $48,881 per unit by the valuation statement. So I say, okay, you structure the transaction and get the transfer agent of NVC Fund, which is Transfer Online, you work with them to put the transaction together, and we'll do it, because the company offered us 10% preferred share annual coupon on the investment. So that's about $70 million a year that they will pay us for the use of those assets. So it was acceptable. Not that the company was not that those companies had anything yet. They were not worth much of anything. So it was us providing them the backing they need to have access to the capital market. And that is how it is done. I mean, companies that have strong balance sheets invest in companies that have none. So it was an easy thing for me, because at that point, NVC Fund was a multi-trillion-dollar balance sheet. I mean, it wasn't just my word. I didn't make it up. The accountants, the bookkeepers, and the financial statement was signed by 2 certified public accountants with MBA degrees. So they did the work of putting together an acceptable financial statement and audit done in accordance with the American Institute of Certified Public Accounting guidelines for the valuation of assets. The bookkeeping was done, or the financial statements was done in accordance with the International Accounting Standard. So we had all of that done. Then I had an analyst to analyze the financial statements and the valuation and the balance sheet of NVC Fund to come up with what a possible rating will be. What's the likelihood of the trust defaulting on their obligation? And after I did the analysis according to the S&P standard, it came up to AAA. Okay, so now we have rating, analysis done, we had audits, we had valuation, and all done in according to the principles of accounting. So the SEC had all of those documents, but they did not believe it because it was, in their mind, can't be true. How can an entity claim that much net worth? As if we made it up. So they started their investigation. They asked for all kinds of information, which was provided to them.
Did they find anything?
Well, I was waiting for them to tell me what they found.
And how long have they been looking?
3 years. Eventually, they said, well, we decided to charge you guys with a complaint. Or I'm not too sure exactly what that is all about, but it didn't make any sense. So after you have all the facts, I think the initial excuse was a possible pump and dump, which doesn't add up because there was no pump and dump. I wasn't a common shareholder. We've not even concluded the transaction when the SEC stopped the trading in those companies. I barely knew, we're barely into 45 days into the transaction. We're still sitting in escrow. We had not even concluded when they came into and stopped and damaged those companies. So it did not add up. I knew there was nothing for them to find because nevertheless, I don't know what the other companies were doing before they met me. So I wanted to see what I told them. I said, well, we know that you didn't own the shares. You were not a shareholder yet. So what is the whole purpose of dragging NVC Fund into the matter? Well, they can't tell me that.